welcome to Furious Driving, and you join me today at the wheel of, I think, Peugeot's last ever rear-wheel drive car, and also the last one to make it into America, and a car from the time when if you wanted a diesel you really had to go French. Yes, this is a 1991 Peugeot 505 GRD Estate. This car is currently for sale at Percival Motor Company down in Lenham in Kent. If you'd like to take a look at it, please do take a look at the link in the description below. And if you like watching reviews of interesting and unusual cars like this, then do please hit that subscribe button. Now on with the review. Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and this is a 1991 Peugeot 505 GRD Estate. But as we're channeling such extreme late 20th century Frenchness, I think I really ought to begin this with Bonsoir my English chums, channel our inner Antoine de Caen here. Now I am aware that we have previously covered a 505 Estate here on Furious Driving, and the reason we've got this one here is not because I thought that was a 504 and came out to do this one anyway, but because that one was actually a very early one. I think, scratching my head from memory, it was a 1982, so one of the very first ones, and it was an automatic. So it's actually a bit of a different car from this one because they facelifted the 505 in 1986, and this is the one of the very last ones at 1991 because the French production stopped in 1992. So this is one of the 1.3 million that were produced, but this is hopefully substantially different from the last one we drove. Now the 505 replaced the 504 in 1979, initially shown in France, obviously as a left-hand drive and a saloon. It wasn't available in right-hand drive until October of 1979, and the Estate though didn't arrive until 1982, so it was 3 whole years before we saw the Familiale or family Estate. I believe in English language countries it was named the Brake, and it came, as in this case, with the 8-seat option, so we'll have an explore of that in a moment. And the big difference between the Estate and the saloon is not just this large lump on the back and the fact that the Estate eventually got these roof rails on there, it is actually a longer wheelbase. It's 2.9 metres, and you may think that's a bit of a coincidence if you know your Peugeots extremely well, that same length as the 504 Estates. It's not, it's virtually the same car underneath. They kept it going on for a very long time. It's a very much if it ain't broke, don't fix kind of a situation. Now, obviously, for a facelift, they have made a number of changes to the car. Basically, the trim, the panel work is still much the same, although we have now got this rather nice metallic grey colour, so it's quite an attractive, modern, sophisticated car for the 90s now, even though it's a car which dates back to the 70s. We've got a nice bit of detailing up here in the rear seat post. We've got our roof bars, as I mentioned. We've got these same old chrome hard metal door handles, soldering on. Plastic mirrors really haven't changed. Something I'd never really noticed until I saw it in this colour though is this interesting scalloping down the front wing. It's actually quite an elegant piece of detailing. The car was designed by a combination of in-house at Peugeot's design department with help from Pininfarina, so there are very much French aspects to it and very much Italian zings as well, so you can see it is quite a stylish car. Now you might notice this has got alloys from, I think, the SR or the GTI. They're definitely an upgrade that someone has added to the car later on. They may have been dealer fit for all we know, but they've been with the car a long time and they do look very good. This would have had steel wheels from the factory. But moving around the front, we've got these headlights. These are the archetypal, squinty, angry looking, very French, very Peugeot lights. First showcased on the 305 back in 1977, but they kind of became synonymous with the brand. Now there were a variety of engine choices, and this is the heaviest bonnet I've lifted in a while. In fact, some of the final ones and the last ones built for America all had the PRV 2.8 V6 in them. This one though is the GRD, so it's got the XD diesel. But just look at this engine bay. This is absolutely eat your dinner immaculate. Incredible considering this is an oil burner. Right, so climbing in the big old bus. It's a little, but not significantly, different to the previous generation, but the interior does seem to be where most of the differences have happened, in fact. Let's start over on the doors. We've now got these dark, soft touch door cards, very soft and padded at the top, harder, but still that flexible vinyl down the bottom, a curiously modern and curvy sculpted cast metal door handle and a nice solid door pull. Very simple design, just these 3 straight lines running front to back on the door, giving it some depth of interest and a small bin pocket down the bottom. You'll notice there is no window winder. There's just a blanking plate where a window winder used to be, and over here in the centre we now have factory window switches for the front. Blanking panel, so possibly the option of rear windows was there but wasn't fitted. Now I don't know if this was a dealer upgrade and the car came with mechanical winders as standard, or if someone retrofitted them later in the car's life. We just don't know, but it's fascinating to see the progress. Now on top of the dash there is not a great deal of T-shelf worry going on. A small sloping dashboard, the distance between the glass and the front of the dashboard is minimal, really not much space at all, and it slopes and curves away in interesting manners. This interior was originally designed by Paul Mr. Mercedes Brake back in the 70s. I don't know if he had a hand in the redesign in the facelift. I suspect that perhaps he didn't, because this is going on about another 7 years later. I don't think they pulled him back for it, but maybe I'm wrong. If you know this, then do get in touch. So what have we got in front of us? We have the biggest, clearest dashboard this side of a Honda Civic, huge clock which suggests there was a rev counter option, speedometer going up to 120, which I imagine being the diesel. This doesn't, and then just 2 other dials for fuel and temperature, and a number of scattered lights, and there are quite a lot of lights hidden in this dark area. The most interesting one is of course for when you're starting the diesel engine. This is an old school diesel. This is when people thought of diesels as smoky and crude. When you start the car, I'll focus in on this one up here, that yellow lamp there. That's your glow plugs. You have to wait for that to go out before you try and start the car. Otherwise you'll just churn and churn and churn and not start. So once that light goes out, this thing just pops into life instantly. Now, either side of that, we have, in typical Peugeot style, curiously rhomboid and square apertures, which look like maybe they should be blanking plates for something, but I don't think they are. I think they're just part of decoration rather than having flat plastic. They've outlined a small area just to make it look interesting. Cozying around those dials, BMW cockpit like, we have got an air vent on the right hand side, a double vent actually, one for the window, one for the driver. And on the other side we've got a bunch of switches, rear window based, fog light and hazard based, and these ones which I think look like they're alarm based, to be honest. And down here we even have, concealed on the side of the column, we've got our headlamp leveling switch. Pretty normal indicator and wiper stalks either side, and a fairly large firmish rubber steering wheel with a line going from strength indeed to strength. Although this isn't the horn, it's too early for an airbag. The horn is over here. That's a funny horn. Now anyway, in the centre we have now got 2 big air vents here at the top, and we have got a big stack of ventilation controls. No air conditioning though, just a swipey uppy downy for your fan, a swipey uppy downy for your temperature, and push button stack for where you want the air to go. Now this is kind of fun. This is possibly one of the most favourite things I've seen on a car in quite a long time. This is, no, not your bag of potions. It's not, I don't know what it could be. It's your coin purse. That little graphic there is your coin purse. Isn't that cute? Underneath that we have got an ashtray which opens the opposite direction. And interestingly, we do have two lighters in here. The socket for them is down here underneath a tiny weeny little random square cubby hole, ideal for licorice all sorts and nothing else. And there are two lighters in here. One is a fairly standard prosaic UK based fag, and the other one is a very more French gitane or something similar, longer and slimmer in the graphic. Underneath that we've got a radio. This is like a doubled in aperture which has got space for a cubby hole underneath it and a singled in radio. Now someone's put a far more modern one up here, and on the right of that there's a really random cubby hole which is not, it slopes in a tiny bit but doesn't do a lot else, so it's not massively handy. Let me just see if I can stand a phone in there. No, you can't quite stand a phone in there. You could probably wedge a Mars bar vertically in there, although it may well fall out if you tried that. Very weird, not quite sure what the point of that one is, just to fill a space. It's box ticking. Over to the left of that we have a small vent, possibly for climate control or the alarm. In the middle of that dash top left and top right, we do have the radio speakers concealed there rather than in the doors. And then interestingly, we've got a double dashboard donut delivery system. We have got a top upper mounted glove box, small and useful for snacks, and a larger one, both flock lined, for more regular stuff. Interesting double dashboard placement. And moving back from the dashboard, we have got a manual. Now the last one we drove wasn't automatic, it was very slow and, well, quite smooth shifting, but the emphasis was heavily on the very, very slow. This is the manual version, so we'll see what that is like. Now, as I say, we have this blanking plate filled with electric window switches in the front, possibly that would have been the back ones, maybe even a space for a switch for the sunroof, because I'd say there's room for 3 switches there. Big old handbrake, and then a panel which looks like it ought to be a cubby of some kind, storage bin, but no, it's not. And up above we've got a little rocky light to turn off and on. Now the big story here, which we need to look at inside this car, are these seats. Now when we drove the 1982 car, it was heavy tweed. It was tough, workmanlike. It was comfortable, but it was hard wearing, and it showed you a man of the people, possibly living on or near a farm in a village somewhere in rural France. This is velour, the king of all fabrics, the best material ever to go into a car, because it's just lovely in every way. You are being hugged by the car when you climb in. This is far more 90s, far more upmarket. This is, you know, what you would find in your Cavaliers and your early Mondeos and Granadas and so forth. So yeah, this is far more comfortable than it would have been in the early cars. Also, we've got nice carpet down the bottom as well. Now the big thing with these cars is they were family cars. There's lots of room in them, so let's take a look in the back. So, climbing into the back of the car, look how long this rear door is. That's about as long as the front door on a lot of cars, so climbing in should be quite easy. And wow, it's really high. It's SUV levels of height. Now someone has pushed this passenger seat right the way back and I didn't notice that. But even so, I still have got a decent amount of knee room, and there are a little bit of vinyl, but then more velour pockets, little air vents, not made of velour, and a ton of headroom. This is really, really big. This is all of the bigness you would need in a car. Now, this is where things get interesting. This is the 8-seater, so back there are 2 more proper full-size seats. Let's see if we can work out how we get into them. Right, down here on the bottom of the seat, we've got a little tag. You pull that and then fold that forward, and then your presumably fairly athletic children or elderly relatives can be shoved in. Can climb into the back of the car, where there is not a great deal of headroom. This is a child-only row, to be perfectly honest. We are very much squeezed in here, against our will potentially. Now these seats will fold forward to give you a big flat load area, so you can take a lot of space in there. I forget how many litres. It's, with the seats down, over 1,000 litres of space. It'll carry 560 kilos of weight in the back, so you can carry a lot of luggage, building equipment, who knows, fish, a lot of fish in here. In the back we are carpeted. We've got speakers, these look factory to me. It's quite narrow. You do very much feel the car is tapering around you at this point, and that's why it's only a 2-seater bench. But hey, it is an 8-seater, and you are a long way from the back of the car. This is always an issue with 8-seaters, which is the 3rd row. So often the kids in the back are right up against the glass, so if the car was rear-ended by something big, you just know that it's got the potential to be quite a nasty incident. Whereas with this, you're still over half a metre from the back panel. The bumper sticks out even further, so it's actually relatively safe back here. Now finally, back here we have the actual boot. Now even with the rear seats up, it still has more space than, you know, many average size hatchbacks would have on their own, even without the 3rd row of seats. If you're in the business of bundling unwilling victims into the backs of cars, you could do that with a team of 8. So if you've got a real struggler, no problem. And if you need to roll that down to get more space in the back, just flick that, that goes forward, the whole lot rolls over. Job done. Right, take my hat off now. It's very warm out there. Wait for the yellow light. And it's alive. The thing just cranks up, happy as you like. Let's find somewhere else for my microphone to be. Okay, manual gearbox. Off we go into the lanes. Now the manual gearbox is typically old Peugeot. It's a little bit vague going from some gears to other gears. First to second, you do have to remember to pull it to the left-hand side a wee bit, otherwise you wind up in third or fourth even. The European cars were all built in France. However, these things were churned out all over the place. They built these things in China, Argentina, Nigeria, Thailand, literally everywhere. Incredibly, as I said earlier, I think up to 2004 for the last ones to roll off the production line, I think in China. These have got the same notably floating, comfortable, absorb anything you want to throw at it ride of its predecessors. This is why they were a real favourite with their buyers, and in underdeveloped countries where the roads were not much better than this, they were an absolute favourite. It was nicknamed the workhorse of Africa, and with good reason. Now, suspension wise, at the front they all got McPherson struts. Saloon's got trailing arms and coils, but the Estate's got a live rear axle, again with coil springs, and apparently some of the Argentinian saloons got the live rear axle as well. Now the choice of brakes you got came down to the model. Everything got disc brakes at the front, but then you got choice of discs or drums depending on what spec. Now this diesel is surprisingly smooth. It's a little bit rough and ready at low revs, but as the speed and the revs pick up, suddenly it does become an awful lot smoother. And these things were bought for their astonishing economy. You could drive the length of a country on a full tanker diesel. And the ground clearance on these is good as well, so if you need to be going over some bumpy rough roads, you can do that. And if that wasn't enough for you, a company called Dangel, I think, in France, I can never pronounce that word, actually did a jacked up four-wheel drive version based on the brake. The controls are all remarkably light. The gear shift, although it's a little vague, is just easy to flick through virtually with a fingertip if you could steer it accurately enough with a fingertip. And it's a 5-speeder as well, so you can cruise in comfort. The steering is, again, very light. The power assistance, I believe, was standard on all cars from the very beginning. It's quite a tight feeling system. There's no play or anything at all. This isn't a huge mileage car. It's not loaded with feel from the road, but you do know exactly where you're going to go, and it's going to go where you point it. Now there is a ton of torque from this engine. It is crazy torquey, so it pulls away quite, well, it feels quite rapid, even if it actually isn't. And I'd forgotten I'd left it in fifth for a moment then, and the car was still just pulling away so easily. You can imagine cruising many hundreds of miles on a journey in this car throughout the length and breadth of France, and enjoying every minute of just being soaking up the ambience and the relaxation in the thing. Or equally, be heading off to a Sunday market, either loading up with supplies for a week of cooking with wine and garlic, or selling some chickens. But of course, this is the later one. It's the one that's loaded with velour and comfort. So this is very much a city dweller's car. This is the kind of, not yuppie exactly, this is the anti-yuppie, but someone who wants a nice, big, comfy car for their family on the suburbs of Paris, perhaps. So yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today in this wonderful slice of Gallic enormousness. I hadn't driven a 505 since last year, and it is still very much the same wonderful floating delight. Thank you for joining me, and if you've enjoyed this, please do hit like and subscribe as always, and join me again next time driving something completely different.